Hello. My clock says it's 1 o'clock. I'm not sure it is. We've got a few minutes to let everybody hop on. I'm going to be working with watercolor again today. I love watercolor. I think it has a lot of uses for art. It's a great medium to use with children because it's affordable, it's fun, and with a little bit of instruction, you can get great results. Okay, my name is Linda Callaway, and I'm coming to you from my home. Please forgive my quarantine hair. I'm like everybody else. I need a haircut. But we're going to just work through that, and I will give you the content that will be for children and adults. If you missed this one, you can always go to the replay and see the other things that we've done. They're going to be posted on Southern Allegheny Museum of Art YouTube channel and Southern Allegheny Museum of Art Facebook page. So you can review any of the content that you have missed. There's some great ones. There's clay, there's acrylics, there's watercolor, there's paper folding, there's all sorts of things. There's mask making. There's all sorts of things that you can find interesting. We have great volunteers, and we're lucky to have them. Okay, let's get to the fun part. I want to show you some things. I just have to put you up here on my stand. Okay, that did not work. Let me try that again. Okay, let me try that again. There, you can see what's in front of me now. All right, this is on my Kindle. It's like an iPad, only I'm not it. This is a watercolor using the well, I'm struggling for words right now. The negative painting, and you put down color, and then you find shapes within that color. And I normally just do florals because I make up florals. They can be any shape I want. And this is one that I did, and I really like it. That's one of the things I'm going to be showing you. Another thing I'm going to be showing you is an easy thing to do with children. This one is not finished. It is done on mixed media paper, and mixed media paper is so-so for watercolor. The only reason I used it, it's something that you can find, and it's not expensive. I did get this sheet, the book with 60 sheets of paper on Amazon, and it wasn't expensive. You can also find it at Walmart. The best thing to paint on is watercolor paper, and that's what I have here. I am going to start by cleaning my brush and putting water in these watercolor. This is a cheap set, inexpensive set called Prang that you can find at Walmart. If you go to find any kind of watercolor paint for your children, please don't buy the one that says washable. They don't have enough pigment in them, and I can guarantee you, you will not like the results. I know washable sounds wonderful when you're working with children, but don't get it. This will slightly stain. I've got some watercolor on my fingernail because I was practicing before we came on, and it comes off pretty well. A little soap and water, I can get off all the watercolor. It wipes up off your table, it wipes up off things without leaving a huge mess. So please consider buying the regular one. Now, I have professional colors. I'm not using them today because I want to show you how you can get, I consider, pretty professional results from using regular supplies. The first thing I'm going to do with this watercolor paper is wet it. I'm using a larger brush, and I'm wetting the entire paper. We're going to do a wet in wet technique. You know this whole paper is wet when you can see a shine. If you don't see the shine, I don't know if I can hold it up for you to see it or not. It has a little bit of shine to it when it's wet, and that's what we want. The first thing we're going to take is a little smaller brush. It can be round, it can be flat. I love flat. And we're going to go into the yellow color, and that's a little bright, but that's okay. Watercolor does get lighter as it dries. If I want some bright color, then I get it a little brighter than I want the finished product to be. Now, I did that quickly. I just went across the paper and put down watercolor, and that was it. I dipped into my water that I have back here. A lot of times I will blot off on the paper before on paper towels before I put it in the water to keep my water cleaner. Now, while it's still wet, we're going to come in with orange. And I usually take my orange and come over into the lid and mix it up. That way, if you touch wet watercolor, sometimes you get a really, really dark color that you may not want. I'm going to make roses. These are not going to be super fantastic roses. These are going to be my impression of roses. I'm going to do probably 5 of them. And I'm using this flat. I can get a nice curve coming in here. And if you do this, and carefully draw them. If you get a round brush and you know that roses look like this and you carefully put it in, you're not going to be as happy as what you get. In fact, I'm going to go back with this round brush. I like it. Traditionally, the round brush is what you use for watercolors. Is that what you have to use? No. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make a little one over here. I do not want these to be solid orange. I'm going to come now in with the red and go back over them. I want this to have a little bit more strength. How do I get more strength in my watercolor? I rub on the cake a little bit, but I don't want it dark, dark, dark. And I am not going over the same areas exactly. I'm just putting these in here. Now, this is pretty wet. You can look at this one. It's really spreading out. Maybe if I can dry my brush just slightly, it won't diffuse out quite as much. And yes, can you see that? It doesn't diffuse out quite as much. I got some of this yellow showing. I'm going to keep doing this until I have got all of these with a little bit of red. Hit and miss. Hit and miss. Now it's time for me to wipe my brush. I better wash this one so I won't accidentally use it. Wipe my brush and rinse it off. The next color I'm going to use is green. Let me show you what this green looks like. That's too bright. That's not a found in nature kind of color that you see that often. And so I don't like it. What I do is get a clean brush, dip in the yellow, and then a little bit in the green. I need another darker color, so I'm going to dip in the blue and make a darker blue. If it needs more intensity, you can add more blue. I'm going to suggest leaves in here. Can you leave little voids in there? What in the world is a void? A void is an area that you do not paint in. Can you leave little voids in there? Yes, you can. Notice what happens if I just drop some of this paint in there. because this is wet and wet, that starts going out and filling in. Now I almost have to wash my brush to go back in this yellow green because it very quickly, the dark color takes over. So I'm just going to come in here. Notice I didn't leave any voids in these tiny little leaves. You don't have to. You can, but you don't have to. I am not trying to cover everything. I am just putting some color in here. Let's put a little bit of this darker. If you're not careful, you will get some of this dark color in on your rose area. That's okay. If that happens to you, don't worry about it. If you really, really hate it, let me get some over here on purpose. Oh, I really hate it. It's on my rose. I can take a wet brush and come in and lift it. Everything is not a calamity in watercolor. There's a lot of things you can do to fix it. Now, I'm not going to go back in there too much with the other color right now because that area is really wet. I'm going to leave it alone. I got kind of a mixture of not necessarily a brown, but kind of a purple from this red and green kind of mixing. Green has quite a bit of blue in it. So I'm getting oh look, I dropped some on there. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go. This is getting, oh, look at this. This is a great example. I'm glad that happened. This one that I just painted has hard edges. That's what happens when you paint on a dry surface. I'm coming in with a wet brush. It has no color on it. I'm going to lightly go around that color, and it's diffusing the color. If you get hard lines that you don't want or don't like, take a wet brush and lightly paint at the edge, and it will diffuse. Right now, I'm wanting it to run because these ran, and I want this to do it also. So instead of wetting the whole paper, because our next step, it has to be dry, I'm going to come in here and soften these edges with just a little bit of water. And I don't like that. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Now, I think I've added just about, I need a little bit of green up here. I've added just about all the leaves I want. I'm going to take this wet brush and put just a little, oh, it's got color. I don't mind that. It made a kind of orange looking thing. I kind of like that. So I can take this brush and come in other areas and add some of that color in. I like it. So it's not necessarily a mistake. But I knew I didn't want this to be really, really sharp edges. Okay. I can't do anything else to this paper until it dries. So I'm going to change. I've got a hairdryer behind me, but those things are loud. So I'm going to take this one and set it aside and bring in this one. This is the one done on multimedia paper. So I'm going to do the next step using this one. I've got a few little diffused flowers that I put in this. I didn't put them in that one. I could if I wanted to, but I decided I didn't really need them. The next step is, if we want to brighten any of these things, we can do it now. And what I mean by brighten, I can take some red, and I can come in here and add a little bit to it. That looks way too bright. It looks like it needs to be more diffused. And how do we diffuse it? We get a wet brush and just go on the side of it. And that's fine. I don't think it needs a lot of brightening. I like what it is. To do the next step successfully, I need dry paper. How do you tell if watercolor paper is dry? Well, try not to touch it. If it's very wet and you touch it, you're going to leave a fingerprint. It's going to smear the pigment, and you're going to see every place you touch. Look at it to see that it's no longer shiny, and if it is, it's very wet. If it's no longer shiny, but you don't know if it's damp or not, go close to the edge and turn your hand over and touch it with the back of your hand very gently. The reason you do the back of your hand, it's a nice flat area, and it won't leave little fingerprints all over your picture. If it feels cool to the touch, it's wet. If it feels cool to the touch, it's wet. Then what you need to do is put a hairdryer on it and move it around and dry it. If your paint is really wet, the hairdryer will move it. Sometimes it's a fun thing to do and you'll enjoy it. But if you're just trying to dry it for the next step, move it around until it's completely dry and it's no longer cool to the touch. So, I am going to outline this now. I can use black, but because these colors are rather muted, black is really harsh. So what I'm going to use instead of black is purple. I could use brown, but I'm not a big fan of brown. Now purple is one of the harshest colors in here, almost as harsh as black. I stuck my brush in this wet cake of purple and then moved over here and added quite a bit of water to it. This is not a detail brush, but it's a smaller brush. And I can come in here and start painting in here again. Notice I'm being very free again. Roses do not need a lot. Oh, look how dark that is. I like those contrasters, dark light, dark light. I am making this whimsical. I want a variety of thick and thin lines. That's about enough for this. I just want to suggest that there's roses here. This little fantasy flower little thing, I'm just going to put some little dark things in the center of it. My leaves. I am not even going to worry about painting it exactly where it is. This brush, when you barely touch it, will form a thin line. If your brush doesn't do that, it's not a very quality brush, and you probably can find some better ones someplace. They don't have to be expensive to form it. I did this on purpose. I included some of that white background on purpose. Am I filling in every single line? Of course not. I like the dots in the center. I'm going to come in here. If you vary your lines, it's more interesting. If you have little white voids here and there in your watercolor, it's more interesting. I can even turn this into two, or not even worry about the fact, I don't know if you can see that or not, worry about the fact that there's green outside that line. I am suggesting flowers, leaves, details. I am not painting details. I am painting suggestions that make your mind does not need very many clues to see flowers or faces. I bet every one of you look at something and start laughing or looking around and go, oh look, there's a face looking at me. I have seen people online that carry Google Eyes with them when they go out, and they put Google Eyes on dumpsters and mailboxes and things because they see faces, and then they just do it for people's entertainment. I think that's cool. I've never done it. I like the idea. If you're in downtown Bedford and see Google Eyes someplace, it wasn't me. Okay, are you seeing that it's bringing out the details in this? Is it photorealistic? It's not supposed to be. Is it whimsical? Yes. Is it doable? Yes. I have some pictures on my camera roll that show work by students, even the area Bedford students, where they did this assignment and did a beautiful job. I can't find it. I can't show it to you because I'm recording on my camera. I looked on my Kindle And there are quite a few pictures, but not this assignment, so I couldn't show it to you. And I could have made photographs, except for my printer is not working right now, and I'm not going to the CVS right now or other places to print them off. And there we go. Is that finished? No. It's got a good start though. Notice that this part had to be completely dry. I did make this, I don't like that one. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it green. I'm going to come in here with this green and make a few green lines in here. What are these? I don't know. They may be vines. They may be stems, but now roses grow on bushes. So, let's make a curve here. Oh, I like that. Let's make one come off here. You can embellish this any way you want. It is your artwork. But I'm going to show you another thing that I like to do with these. I think this one needs a little bit more in the center. Not a lot. Okay. I'm going to get a medium-sized brush, like this, and I'm going to dip it in some of this red. I don't want it everywhere. I'm going to use what I call a mask. This is just typing paper. I'm going to lay it on top of these flowers. And anytime you lay, this one's a little bigger. Anytime you lay something down that covers something else, it's called a mask in art. So I'm going to get some of this red color and get it soupy. You make the paint soupy by adding more water to it. And I'm going to get this other brush right here and start doing dots. I didn't mind them on the leaves. I did not want them on the roses. If it gets on the edges of the roses, that's okay. You can get a stiffer brush and flick it, but I think this is a good way to do it. Notice that there's small dots. They're not, there's a few in the middle that are larger, but they're small dots. They're not great big. And by hitting this way on this other brush, you can kind of control where they go. If I take this off, notice that there's little dots on this paper. If I left them there, oh, I smeared it, don't care. I can put a few dots on it if I want a few in the middle of the rose. I just didn't want a lot. I don't mind a few, I just didn't want a lot. So that's one thing you do have to worry about. If your paint on your rose is wet and you lay something on top of it, it might smear. What I probably should have done is hit it with the hairdryer first. Now I'm going to do a few purple. Be careful with the purple. Like I said, it is very, very dense, very dark. I just dropped something on there. Look at that. Took my paper towel and got it up. See, these are much bigger. Why? Maybe there's a difference in the strength that I did on this. I don't know. I do have a great big dot right there. It doesn't bother me. There's two things I can do if it bothers me. Number one, I can use a thirsty brush and get it up. A thirsty brush is one that's wet, but not too wet, and you just come in there and pick it up. Another thing you can do is dot it with a paper towel. Okay, I think this one is finished. Now, it's very whimsical, but I like it. You still can add a few more of these curlicues if you want. You can add the little bitty blue flowers here and there if you want, but you don't have to. This is ready to be put in a mat, to be cut up. You could make cards out of it. there's a lot of things you could do. You can take a photograph of it and print it out as a regular 4x6 photo and make it into a card. So there's a lot of things you can do with your watercolor painting. Is this okay? Yes. This is the mixed media paper. It's okay. I think this one will be better. About dry. Notice what I just did. I got little dots on this cardstock or this watercolor paper over here. That's okay, because we were going to paint on the other side anyway. So this is going to go off to the side. I am only going to do a little bit of this one, just to show you what it looks like if you choose to do black or a gray, and show you the difference that happens if you do it on watercolor paper. I like the purple, but you may not. When this gets completely dry, if you want to use a little marker, it can be a Sharpie, it can be a technical pen, but you can draw on it like this when it's completely dry. But if it's the least bit wet, do not try your Sharpies and your markers. Now, this will go to a nice point if I get it in a point. I do not want it to be big fat lines. Is this going to be different? Oh, see how it's both? See that little bit of yellow or white showing in there? I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to let some of that show through. You might like this one better. I don't know. I'm leaving all that over there undone because this is whimsical, which I like. I made the leaf bigger. There is some color in there. I'm going to do broken color right here. That's broken color, where you do a little bit and then not make the complete line. That's fine. Can you make them larger? Of course you can. When you're painting, it's yours. And experiment. You may not care for this one when you first do it, and then you may fall in love with it the next time you try it. So experiment. I want to show you something else to get roses, but it didn't work out the way I wanted. And I'll tell you why. You know how Pinterest tells you all these things. I hadn't tried it before, but I've always heard that you can take a whole stalk of celery and trim it and turn it into a stamp that you can make beautiful roses with. Notice that little flick of white I'm leaving. There's a difference between watercolor paper and the mixed media paper. There's a difference between using the purple and using the black. When you're the artist, it's your time to decide which one you want to do. This one I think needs some of the sprinkles. I will do that later. I will come back in and I will sprinkle on it later. I'll finish this one and post it. When I don't have time to do things on camera, I try to post them, and Morgan is wonderful for putting them up on the website. Let me show you real quickly what it does look like with the celery. Let me get a piece of plain paper. This celery did not have the rubber bands around it, and I tried to tie it with jute, and it shifted on me. If it's not nice and flat, it doesn't do too well. Here's some of the ones that I tried. I will try them again just to show you. And if you have one that this stayed really tight because this is the bottom, so nothing's been done to it. Because this is water-based paint, you can trim that off or whatever. It doesn't hurt your celery. You can still eat it. I know some people go, well, I would never eat that. Well, I would. This is just the bottom of it, so I probably wouldn't eat this part. This would be the kind that I would discard, or the kind that I would try to regrow. Have you ever tried that with your vegetables or your cut off your lettuce bottom and try it. Now, I'm letting it sit there for a while for the moisture to come off. It came off great on this edge. It didn't on this other edge. I don't know why. You can come in with your paintbrush and very gently do a little bit, and that's not a bad rose. And it's fun for the kids. Vegetable stamping is really fun for children to do. You can take bell peppers and cut them in half. You can take cauliflower, mushrooms, apparently celery, apples, all sorts of things from your kitchen. And instead of using watercolor, I am using a little bit of acrylic paint here. That too came out really good, except it needs just a little bit more here and there to suggest the rose. That's all you need. If you want it a little bigger, you can make it a little bigger. So I just wanted to give you another thing that you can do in your kitchen with your children. Notice these are different sizes because one came from the bottom and one came closer to the top. This area over here has the greenery and stuff on it. You don't want to get that part on there. Okay, that's enough just to kind of give you an idea of what you can do. All right. This one is also ready for details on it. I'm not going to do it right now. I will do this off camera. What is good with this is half of a watercolor card, and it can have all the detail that you want on it. Then it can be glued on a piece of cardstock, and you've got a card that you can send somebody, and then you can tell them that you and your child made it at home, and people will be amazed. Oh, that's beautiful. People are amazed by a lot of little things that you can do. And do I like whimsical? Yes. I think it's a wonderful thing to do with your child for fairly good results. Now what I want to do, and I'm looking, is show you the other real quickly. The other type that you can do for the, of course this isn't going to work. My tablet turned off. Where you can do the found edges, the negative shapes. Yellow is another good starting point. That's what I started with earlier. Huh, that's a little dirty. I don't care. I forgot to wet it first. I'm going to go ahead and wet this one. The reason I'm doing two is it fills up this piece of paper, but it also allows us to dry one and work on it while the other one is drying. I don't think it was the yellow that was the problem. I think it was my tray. There's a little bit of black in there. Just for your information, yellow and black can make a beautiful green. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's true. A little bit of yellow here and there. I like leaving the yellow where I'm going to have leaves. Little warm color. When you go into your color and it's not coming up, it needs more water in it. It's a little dry. I don't wash my brush off. I just touch in there. Okay, I am going to rinse it off. This blue has been sitting here for the longest time. It is so dark. I am going to come in here and add lots of water in here. I'm not using that tray because it's kind of dirty. Ooh, that's a lot of water on that brush. I should get some of that water off. I'm going to touch that thirsty paper towel and come in here and add some of this blue here and there. Where it touches the yellow, you know what color it's going to be. And you can see it right in here starting to turn. If you want to make it a little more yellow, a little more green, add some yellow to some of these areas. Not all of them, just here and there. That's very splotchy looking, but I can change that in a little bit. Now I did the yellow over here. I didn't add any of the other colors. I think on this one, instead of orange, I'm going to go to red. It may look purple in areas. That's okay. Go to the blue just a little bit. Remember, that blue is intense. When we're doing negative areas, we want these to start blending together, and then we're going to find, well, what I find in all of them just about are floral areas. I don't want that much white. I don't mind having a little bit of white, so I'm going back and touching here and there. This one has less white. That's okay. Do I want a touch of red in this one? Maybe. That looks kind of purple. That's kind of cool. You don't want to get too many different colors in there. Remember, when you touch wet, it diffuses out. Do I like that color that it's getting? I like to put a little orange in this other one, maybe. Okay, that's fine. Now, I can't do anything with this one until what? Till it completely dries. I don't have another one painted to show you, but back behind me, I have a hairdryer, so sorry for the noise. Sometimes you can make it run. Like the shape in there. Now remember, the best way to test it to see if it's dry is to put the back of your hand on it. Well, now it's really warm because of the hairdryer, but it's no longer cool. This right in here, I like that shape. It's got some encapsulated white in there. I really like that. So I'm going to turn this direction, and I'm going to start on this one first. Still a little bit wet. Now that the heat has dissipated, it feels slightly cool, but I think it's dry enough for my next step. I want a medium brush. Either one of these brushes would do. I think I'm going to use this one that's a little bit larger. First thing I'm going to do is wash them to make sure they're clean. This brush is used. I'm going to come in with a darker color. Notice I got quiet. That happens when you start creating. It's hard to create and talk at the same time. That is way too dark, so I'm going to soften this edges with some water. Remember, we can diffuse something by using a wet brush. So I'm going to diffuse this watercolor out with a wet brush. I don't like those harshly sharp edges, but I do like the dark color. Later on, I'll probably come in here, I'll show you what I would do. Very gently use this color when it's wiped out to do that. Notice I've got a hint of a flower right here. Let me try another leaf in here. That leaf was already there, I just had to find it. If I want this a crisper line, I go into the dry area. I don't like that really sharp area in here, so I'm going to wet it. And it will diffuse out. I need something in here, and there's not a lot of color in there. That would be another flower, but it might be a flower that's just sort of hidden in here. Let me show you what I mean. Flowers do not have to have any certain shape. They might have, ooh, that's very bright. I think that's too dark with what I'm going to, so I'm going to blot it. Now, oh, that brought it back down to where I want it. I don't know what that flower is, but because it's muted, in there, it's just suggesting that there's something back in there. I probably need to come in here with a different color. Oh, look at that, it's purple. Now look what I can do right here. I can take this purplish color and make another leaf that is behind that one. And that leaf is darker than that one. It doesn't look too much like a leaf yet, but when I put a little bit, if I put a few little lines on it, it starts reading as a leaf. Remember, these, look at those, I don't know if you can see it or not. Right in there, there's some little dots that are not completely colored in. I'm going to leave them. I'm going to take this color. I think I'm going to add a little bit of red to it because I love that violet that showed up over here. I'm going to come in here and have another muted flower in there. Maybe two. Let's get two. I don't know exactly what it is. You don't have to know. You don't have to name everything. You've got shapes in there. Now I've got a lot of yellow right there. If I put just a tiny bit of green in there, maybe I can come around it because that's wet. Remember, this is going to diffuse a little bit. I tend to paint a lot of detail in this background just a little bit at a time. It has to dry. I'm getting some lines in there. I'm getting multiple leaves. Now this is hard to do while you're watching because I find things, I don't like that sharp edge. How am I going to do that? I'm going to come in here with my wet brush and just dampen it. What happens is it starts diffusing out. And it starts disappearing as a sharp edge. You can even do this when it's completely dry. I don't have any stars in here. Not as in stars in the sky, a focal point. There's nothing that's a focal point in here. There's a flower right here. I need to bring it out. So I'm going to come in with blue and a lot of water. I'm going to come in over here and paint some blue to show where that flower is, to make it the star that it needs to be. What is that I just drew? Don't know, don't care. What I'm doing is bringing out this flower. What am I going to do with those sharp edges? You know. I'm going to diffuse them out. I will come in here with some leaves. I will come in here with some flowers that are intertwined in here. But that's all I do to diffuse out that background, and I build it up a little bit at a time. Look at that really dark that developed with that purple and the blue. I like that. I will come back in here when this is finished, and I will come in here and in certain spots in this, I will put some really, really dark accents just to make it show up. Now that's starting to spread into that leaf a little bit. Remember, I can always use the thirsty brush and pick it up. I need to come into that flower, whatever it is, and give it some definition. Not a lot. A little bright. I can come in and diffuse it a little bit. I want the eye to read this as a flower. I want you to look at it and go, oh, that's a nice flower. I can add some yellow that's lighter in the middle, and it kind of shows up as orange. If I want to add a little bit of yellow to this flower, leaf. I can brighten up the leaf with a little bit of color. Now, this is showing me, and I got to be careful because remember this is wet. See how that's diffused out? Don't mind it too much though. I need to come around in here and start finding more flowers, more petals, more leaves. I could find some insects. I could find all sorts of things in here. As soon as it gets dry, if you want to paint twigs, you can. Twigs just are little things like that. This is the detail that should be done to the end. The reason I'm doing it now is to show you what we can do. On this one, if I wanted to do something totally different, not florals, I could. I could turn this into some kind of animal. I could paint a fanciful background to it. I could put leaves all around it. You want to try that? I will finish this one. I will post this one. It's just going to be a little bit at a time, coming in there and finding leaves and finding flowers and adding dark. We go from the lightest to the darkest when we're using watercolors. With acrylics, you can go either way. I still usually go from the lightest to the darkest with acrylics, but you don't have to. That's interesting. I could make like one more flower over in here and then leave the background muted. I could put a few more details into this area and just leave it that way if I wanted. Okay. Remember this one, I used a black detail pen. And I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Also, I like to do the splashes on it when it's finished. Okay, I hadn't even thought about what I would do on this. So let me come up. Let's just kind of go with some kind of cat. I'm not trying to put a lot of pencil on here. Just suggest it. Just something that we can see. All right. Let me go ahead and turn it to your direction. I'll paint it upside down. Doesn't bother me at all. First of all, I need a darker color than is in here. To show him up. There's other ways that I could use. I don't know. I don't like those pictures. I can have leaves around him too. He could be out in the garden. Why am I using blue-green? Why not? That's usually my go-to for background. Why am I putting red in his ear? Why not? I don't have a lot of rules. Purple would look good in this background also. I could come in here to begin with and wet this background with just water, and then I really won't have hard edges, because everything I put down will diffuse. I like that. So I'm going to come in on this other side and show you how different it looks when I come in and diffuse this by adding water in here. Let's get it a little purpler over here. But if I put purple on this side, I need a little purple on this side. Notice I can just drop it in there and then wet it, and it diffuses out. Got my windows open and I'm getting some fresh air. It feels good. If I really want those whiskers to show up on this one, I probably will come in with a white little pen and draw them in. I'm going to have to turn it back around to do his face. Sorry. Notice I can come in here any place I want and drop some dark in and watch it come out. The only place I have sharp, hard edges is right here. If I decide I don't like those, I can get rid of them. And the way I can get rid of them is kind of scrub it with my brush. Remember, when you're doing your watercolor, you're in charge of how it turns out. If you don't like what I'm doing, if you think, oh, well, she shouldn't be making those lines so thick, don't make yours that thick. If you're thinking your cat needs different shapes, if you want a white dot in the eye, what are you going to have to do? Well, in watercolor, you're going to have to just leave it unpainted. You can go back and add a white dot of acrylic paint, a paint pen, or something like that. A lot of watercolorists want to paint pure. They don't add white to their painting. I sometimes add white detail. I'm not that much of a purist. I am going to put a lot more in this background that's interesting. Because I'm using a medium tone here, I can always come back darker and paint things that I want in here. I hope that gave you an idea of what you can do to come in and make your drawings, your paintings more interesting. Remember, you're only inhibited by your imagination. And if your cat, my cat looks funny, I don't like this coming in here, but I can fix some of that in the later stages. I will show you a finished thing later. You don't have to paint the natural world as you can see it. You can make up your world as you're going along. Remember, this is inexpensive watercolor. I'm not sure what they charge for this at Walmart. Probably $8 or $9. This is an old one. This I've had for several years. My yellow was running out, my red and orange were running out, but there's a lot of paint still in this area right here. You just take your brush and do it. You can buy the little tubes of watercolor and replace these. Because they're inexpensive, because they're made for children, I would invest in these. I hate to say brand names. There are some brand names I could never recommend. And the reason why is they don't have as much pigment and you won't be happy. Crayola is one that's okay. Since I'm not blasting it, I can mention the name. I have used Crayola watercolors, and some of them are good. So if you want to use those, again, I'm going to stress, please don't buy the washable ones. These are not that staining. These are not that something that is going to cause a problem in your home. So the others are not worth a dime. Guaranteed. Now, it is 10 to 2. I didn't take a complete hour. And I have quarantine hair. I'm not going to worry about it. So please have fun. Please use yours watercolor to do all sorts of things that you like and make up. Remember, you can take and make a complete dab of color, let it blend, let it flow, and then let it dry and come back in and pick up details. Work light to dark is the best way to do it. I would love to see you mailing out some cards that you made. You can take the paper that you painted and trim it up and put it on cardstock and mail out a card. Find some junk envelopes around the house and make your cards fit those junk envelopes and mail them to Grandma, mail them to Aunt, mail them to Uncle. Use the postal service. I'm not going to say another word about that. Mail them out and brighten somebody's day. We all want a day brightened by something. I love you. I hope you have fun. I hope you use art to brighten your world. One last thing, I was in kind of a funk last night. I got out my multimedia tablet and I painted a couple of paintings, very, very whimsical paintings, and I felt better. When I went to bed last night, I was in a much better mood. If you'd like me to, I can show them to you now. And they're not fine art. They are whimsical. The first one I painted with a friend on Facebook, and she is a public school teacher, and she was teaching this to her students, and she kindly let me go. We got on Zoom, and I painted with her. The second one is something that I made up. Let me see right here if I can change this. Oh, there's my camera. No, you don't want to see that. I'm trying to find out where I can show you these pictures. And you can see them. And I don't see a place to switch this one. Let me put it back on my camera stand. And there you go. I'm not sure which direction this is going. This is a toucan. I think I need to turn it this way for you to see. Yes. This is a toucan that I painted with an art teacher in Baltimore, I believe. Doesn't matter where you are in the world when you're using Zoom and when you're online. And this is the next one I painted. I really liked the way she was teaching this. And she had elementary and middle school students painting along. And this is the one that I used some flowers that somebody else had painted and turned it into a whimsical fig. And it was so much fun. Making up your designs, making up your shapes. The only thing that I want you to notice about these, this is an 11 by 14 tablet. I painted large. It's bigger than my hand. So that's what I recommend for you. Paint large when you're painting on paper. Take it up. If you paint on something that is small, all of this paper, but I can always trim it. I used to fuss at my students that would turn something in, and they would have little bitty things, and they could be wonderful in the middle, but they didn't use their paper. So I'm encouraging you to use your paper wisely. Thank you so much. Spread the love with Sama Bedford. Check out the YouTube site on the ones that you've missed. Bye. I love you.